Welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic. I am Shane. This is
And
Andrew,
I,
a fine
Andrew.
purveyor of this publishing company, of which you should all buy everything that has ever been made there. Is there any update for the latest book, which is coming out or actually has come out pretty much? It is this book here, and I've been told that my copy's on the way.
Yes, your book is on its way. The UK backers for the Kickstarter, their books have arrived, and the rest of the books start shipping on Thursday. And yeah, we'll be getting books out to the backers from the Kickstarter in North America and Europe. And then for everyone else, it's on sale, PDF on our website or printed versions and PDF on Drive-Thru RPG. We'll put the links below. And it's our biggest book yet for the Monster series. Good reviews so far. As I was telling Shane earlier, there's a lot of humor in this book, and that's kind of a trend through the series. More humor has arrived.
And I have to ask, how many books are currently in your home like right now? You said that they've arrived from the printer. So are you like having mountains of books, like 40,000 copies, or is it a pretty controllable amount?
1,300 pounds.
Oh my lord!
Yeah.
Oh wow! I did not realize
So
it was.
yeah, so 1,300 pounds of books. And luckily now, since we've moved out to the suburbs, we have a garage to store them in that stage. However, I still take over part of the house in this phase of shipping and packing. And
Yeah.
I have my little elf, my daughter, to help with recycling. But she's insisting this time the books are too heavy. So that's one sign that this is our biggest book yet.
Nice. These books
Yeah,
are heavy and they're hard to
yeah.
move.
But she has no problem with her backpack loaded with her lunch, her water bottle, and all her stuff. But carrying two books, two hardcover books, is too hard.
It becomes like a chore. Like, oh, and she's dragging them for effect across the floor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it's on sale, and we should announce. I'm gonna probably in 2 weeks we'll announce what the new book is, um, and that Kickstarter should launch next month for book number 5.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to it. I will say nothing because I don't know anything. It's a complete secret.
No,
No
only
information
about
has been revealed.
half a dozen people in the world know. So
But this week we're talking about rangers. Rangers from the
yes,
north, rangers from the south. Where are these rangers from?
these rivers have been in fantasy and in D&D from near the beginning. So another archetypal type of warrior, one who works in the wilderness, who often is dealing with evil humanoids, which some I know think is not appropriate these days, which is just ridiculous because they're a fantasy monster and they're an archetype, and you can change their name and have a new creature, and the archetype will still be there. So they often deal with evil humanoid creatures like orcs and goblins and lizard men, and they are basically kind of the front line of defense against the beasts of the wilderness and monsters, and they're the ones out there in the wilds and the scouting and dealing with the creatures, and really good at tracking, obviously, and hunting, and often stealthy. Usually, well, supposed to be very good with their bow, um, and they're not as much of a tank as a paladin or a fighter or even a barbarian, especially in fifth edition. And they're spellcasters, which is somewhat controversial. In fifth edition, they're spellcasters. And, there's some classic rangers like probably Aragorn and Legolas from Lord of the Rings. The
Yeah.
Witcher is pretty much a ranger type, a monster hunter ranger. And then there's also Drizzt the Drow from the R.A. Salvatore books. Um, and yeah, a very classic class for D&D. One of the favorites, and this one, however, has lots of controversy around it.
Why is that? Is it because there? Let me think. Why would there be controversy around being a spellcaster in 5e when you're a ranger? Like, is there something I've not learned?
Well, there's two really main controversies I can personally think of. One is that the class is uh, kind of weak, weaker than people wanted, especially the Beastmaster subclass, which we'll talk about a little bit. The other controversy, which I just mentioned, is that a real ranger in fantasy lore is not really a spellcaster.
I always
So
think of them as a stealthy character. Like, well, I mean, the independent loner, right? That to me is what a ranger is, and it's always
yeah,
portrayed that way. There's
yeah.
never a ranger who like hangs out at the bar, is like the talk of the town, and then buggers off to the middle of the woods. And be like, I'll be back next week, boys, and then leaves. Like you never hear about that. It's always the what is it in Lord of the Rings in the films, the Fellowship of the Ring, where uh, Aragorn is like sitting in the back, and he's then suddenly there's like that the flame from the pipe or whatever like lights
Mhm.
his face very briefly, and it's always the mystery character, and I
Yeah,
find that is it's very attractive to people to do that, and I could see why. Uh, if you give that character more power other than sort of the sword and the bow, it kind of breaks it. I'm trying to think of, did Aragorn, at least in the films anyway, was there any magic that he did? I don't think he did any sort
no.
of magic-y kind of things. But
No, no. And you're right. Like you think of two archetypal scenes for the ranger. One would be that scene of Aragorn sitting in the tavern with his hood and the pipe and his hood up, and like you said, he's mysterious. He's a loner. The other would be a ranger in the wilderness with their bow, stalking something
yeah,
or tracking. So you're right. It does. I think it takes away from what a ranger really is. And in our new book, which we just talked about in the Monsters of the Wilderness, we add a ranger subclass that doesn't have any magic, which is more of a ranger combined with a rogue. And I think if you do that, it's kind of more of the typical ranger. So
yeah,
that's some of the controversy around it. Um, your hit points are okay. You get a D10 for your hit dice, like fight. You get light armor, medium armor, and shields. So again, you're not a tank like a paladin or a fighter. You can't use heavy armor, or you're not proficient anyway. The weapons are the same like fighter, simple and martial. And your skills, they say 3 from animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature, perception, stealth, and survival. So there's a lot of elements to ranger. You need lots of tools in your toolbox if you're a scout out in the
yeah.
wilderness. Um,
Like out of those
and
right there, I mean, to me, it's like insight, investigation, and stealth. Um, that kind of would be the sort of the first combo. Then maybe investigation, survival, athletics. They're definitely good builds that you could make around that. But I don't know. I
yeah,
always gravitate towards the how sneaky can I be as a ranger, because
right.
half the time when you play rogue, at least for me, uh, you're kind of a ranger. Does that? I mean, we can get into that, in another week. But
Yeah.
to me, there's all these overlaps for the ranger to kind of to build upon. But
Yeah. Yeah. I think they've made, and through a lot of the classes, the tendency, especially with fifth edition, is to make them have healing and to have them have magic to the point where everybody can almost heal and everybody has magic. And I think that takes away from the spellcasters. So they've
true,
kind of made a ranger more like a druid, and they've made a rogue a bit like a ranger, right? So that's why I think it's important to stay to those archetypes. Otherwise, you kind of lose definition in your class and in your character, and everyone's just
yeah.
kind of the same. Like everyone's a furry creature who can heal each other, and you
Everyone
lose some
becomes
of the
Ewoks.
yeah, pretty much. pretty much with their Pokemon companion. Like, so did I say that? I said that, yeah. So the fighters, they have fighting styles, but they don't have as many. They have archery, defense, dueling, two weapon, just like we talked about last week. So the archery helps, but because it's +2 at attack. But I think they should have added even more. Like make that even a bit higher. I mean, add a damage bonus as well. Um, and then to get into the features of the ranger, one of the key ones is favorite enemy. And so you choose a creature type, and this again goes towards that in the wilderness, you're going to be dealing with evil humanoids. So you choose
Yeah.
one of those, usually one of those, but it could also be dragons and other things, giants. And so you have some bonuses against this enemy, and you speak their language, which is a nice bonus. And then you
I
get
like
to
that part
add,
especially. Yeah,
yeah,
that to me is a real one because if you are trying to be stealthy, chances are you're going to run into goblins or orcs or something like that. So
mhm,
actually understanding what they're saying is a huge help.
yeah,
How often do you run into dragons? Not so much.
no, yeah, no, I think it's really good. And then you can add other enemies at 6th and 14th level. You can add more favorite enemies. So that's one of the features. Another one is natural explorer. So you choose a favored terrain like woodlands or desert or whatever it is,
Yeah,
mountains, and you get some bonuses with that, especially tracking, foraging. And I think actually both of those are quite useful. I think most people I've seen who play rangers don't really take advantage of those that much, but I think they're quite useful.
no. Well, yeah, especially since you have. I mean, the difficult terrain one is huge, especially
Yeah,
if you have like a, if you know what terrain your particular adventure is going to be in, you could pick one that hopefully is going to dominate the region you're in.
right.
Um, you can't ever change that though. Can you change that? Like if you suddenly find yourself, oh, the adventure is going into a thing. I guess there's really no way to kind of
Well,
train your ranger to change that favored environment.
yeah, I don't think technically, but again, the game is always adaptable. So a player could talk to their dungeon master and maybe they'd let you do that. Um, and I think that's a good thing. Like, usually, if there's something like that in my games, the player comes to me and says, hey, this adventure we're doing, what would be good? And then I will
Yeah,
tell them,
true.
like, well, Woodland will be good at, but with my stories, it's not going to be, you're never going to be just in one setting. But I would try to
Exactly,
give
exactly.
them, I'll try to give them lots of opportunities to be in that favored terrain for sure.
Right.
Um, natural, that, yeah. And then you have primeval awareness. So you get to sense, um, you use a spell slot to sense if creatures are nearby. Personally, I would rather have that be more realistic. Like you'd have to spend some time. Um, I'm not sure if you need to spend time to do this. I think actually you do. But I think I would be nicer if it was more realistic, like it was part of you examining the environment instead of just,
Having a
yeah,
spider sense or something.
I
Oh,
think it,
the hair on my arms is going up. I sense that there is a goblin somewhere within a mile of us or
yeah,
something.
I think I'm not sure, but I don't think it's so practical. I think it's kind of more like a sense. Anyway, um, you get an extra attack, not as many as fighters. You just get one extra attack at 5th level, but that helps. Land stride, so you can move through non-magical difficult terrain.
Yeah.
Um, you can hide in plain sight and camouflage yourself. At a really high level, you can actually almost vanish into the wilderness. And you can even fight creatures you can't see with your senses, which again, yeah, it's a bit too magical for my taste. Um, and then there's Foe Slayer, which is really powerful. That's at 20th level. You can use your Wisdom modifier to add to attack or damage rolls of your favorite enemies. So
Nice.
that's pretty good. I might even want to have that lower, maybe if you were trying to rebuild the ranger. Um, spells, like we've been talking about, Hunter's Mark is usually one that's chosen. It's pretty useful. Cure wounds. You've got Fog Cloud and Beast Sense. dark vision if you don't have dark vision already. Find
Yeah.
traps. Pass without trace. Pass without trace is a really useful one to help the whole group be
Yeah.
stealthy. And then I think water breathing and tree stride are quite useful. It helps you move around
Yes.
the environment.
Yeah, water breathing especially. I mean, out of all of those, to me, I would say that um, water breathing and dark vision, dark sense, dark vision are probably the more sort of powerful of the two because uh, cure wounds as well. But definitely those two are sort of common things, if that's a way to think of them, where,
Mm-hmm.
if you are, we need to go to that lake and at the bottom of the lake is a thing and we have to go there, like having something like that, hugely thing. And dark vision, being able to turn dark vision off is actually not a terrible thing either. But yeah, I like most of those actually, but those are my favorites.
Yeah, and that's the way the class is set up. Rules is written. So those are some of the options. And then you have your two subclasses. And the most popular, the one that more people favor, is definitely the hunter.
Yeah.
That's a more traditional ranger. And you basically get lots of different maneuvers and ways of dealing with enemies offensively and defensively. But there's not a ton of flavor to it. But that definitely is the favorite, and partially because the other one is so disliked overall. So we'll talk a little bit about the beast.
Beast.
Yeah, the Beastmaster. So it's the one where you get a companion animal, and it has to be medium or smaller, challenge rating 1/4 or less, and they can. You have to use an action to command them to do different things.
Go get him, sloth.
Yeah, exactly. Later on, it becomes a bonus action to command them, and you can share spells. A spell that affects you can affect your companion as well. And yeah, and there's also an unearthed arcana version of the ranger, which seems to have fallen by the wayside. And there's also a new beast master in Tasha's book,
Oh,
which
really?
addresses some of the issues. Um,
Excellent.
and Cawood Publishing, like I said, we have the Monster Hunter in the Underworld book. We talked about that a little bit last week. Sort
Yeah.
of similar in some ways to the Witcher character, to Geralt. And we have the Wild One, the new one in the Wilderness book, which has no magic. So we actually have two Ranger subclasses. I'm a big fan of Rangers. And again, the cons about this is that the Beastmaster in general, people feel that the companion is not very powerful, first of all, because you're choosing from not that powerful creatures. You're choosing from um, bats and
I just
um,
actually looked it up about what common creatures you will find for Beastmasters, and it's like
right.
badger, dire rats, dogs, riding dog. What the hell's a riding dog? Eagle,
Yeah,
hawk, horse, owl, pony, snake, wolf, and my favorite, camel. I'm like,
yeah,
that would be like the coolest, beast to have as your companion because it's like a not widely experienced creature. It's
right,
quite tough from what I remember, and you
right.
wouldn't want to make it angry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think somebody made a mistake because it's riding horse, but it actually you can't use the riding horse, I believe. I think a riding horse
No,
is it large? I think it's large.
riding dog.
There's no riding dog. There's a
I
mastiff.
have no idea what that even is.
Yeah, there's like a large dog is a mastiff. Um, but you can't even use like a giant bat because it's large. You can't use a giant owl because it's large. And you could use a weasel, a hawk, like a panther, like the drow character.
Yeah,
You could use that. Um, yeah, in the book it says mastiff instead of riding dog. I guess
there
it's a
is a
riding
riding
dog.
dog The riding dog is from 3.5.
Okay. And a riding dog, a mastiff is medium, so technically a gnome or a halfling probably could ride one of them.
Well, exactly. I mean, I could see why
Yeah.
they would have a riding dog if you decided to be a species that was a lot smaller.
Right.
But 3.5, who cares? That doesn't exist in my world.
Yeah.
I skipped over
So
that.
yeah. So some people think the beast is not that powerful. Um, the big controversy and the big problem people have had is that it takes an action to command your creature. So you have to choose
Yeah.
between taking your action for yourself or taking time to send your creature in to do something. And in the new version of it, it's a bonus action instead, which I think is much better.
Right.
Um, and it's still not that powerful. A lot of basically almost all the summoning spells, like you have a character who conjures elementals all the time.
Yeah.
That spell, for the most part, is more powerful than this. Um,
That doesn't
so
surprise me.
yeah, that's why there's been a lot of people who felt that it hasn't been that powerful. Um, you don't have as many attacks as fighters, for example, and also people have wondered, maybe they should have made the archery a bit better because usually the archetypal ranger is quite a good archer. So as I was saying, maybe you should have increased that attack bonus and damage bonus. Maybe some situations they have advantage to attack.
I gotta say, I kind of want to play. This happens every week. I want to play a ranger now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say that for
yeah,
every single one, I suspect.
yeah, exactly. I did play a ranger in 5e. I haven't played that many characters. He was a half elf who I actually put in our last book, in the city book, because his playing time was very brief. First session, he did quite well and he was useful. They were in the wilderness. At the end, we were in caves, and I took out the big bad evil guy, the leader of this cultist group. But I don't know where the rest of the party was. They were
They
nearby,
weren't around.
but but not close enough to help me, because when I was doing my death saves, I rolled a 1 and he died in the first session of the campaign.
That is the worst.
Yeah. So his rebirth is that he's a creature character in the Monsters of the City book, Sirius Moonlight, and he's been born again to live another day. I don't think you've played a range, right?
um, I think I seem to I think of one of the characters I played in the last couple of years as being a ranger. Um, but again, they died early on. I have no memory of who that was. It was after Raven. It might have been the character after Raven, but they died
Oh, okay.
again. But but again, it might have been a different class. I don't recall. I just remember shooting a bow for quite some time. But
Okay.
and I think I died because I got a cursed bow of some sort. It was probably 3 years ago. It was a while.
Right.
But I didn't go back to that. That might have been when I started, thinking that tieflings were better somehow, because I kept dying. But who knows? But definitely the those are a very rare class for me to play.
Yeah.
Um, I think I sort of go if I want to be sneaky, I go rogue. But yeah, maybe it's time for a ranger. Maybe it is. I'll have to roll some
Yeah.
backup characters this week.
Yeah. Like you said, I have a rogue that I played for a while, longer than my other characters, and she's probably a better ranger than my other characters I've had, and definitely has lasted longer than Sirius. Yeah. Some people have
It
even
just kind
said
of
that. that a fighter in the fifth edition is a better ranger than the ranger.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we were talking about when we were discussing humans, like they are the underappreciated character species that you just don't see often enough. And I mean, you generally you start with them. You start with being a fighter as well. You know, that's kind of where you go, and then you start getting more creative after that sort of experience.
Right.
But yeah, rangers definitely. You know, why not be a human ranger? There are plenty of them out there in fiction. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you tweak things a bit, if you make the companion, it's a bonus action for you to work with your beast, command your beast, and maybe
yeah.
make their archery a bit better. It's easy to tweak it. Um, yeah. I don't think it's as absolutely terrible as some people have made it out to be. With some tweaks, it's pretty good. But they could have added more. Hopefully, that's something
Yeah.
that will improve. I don't know why the Unearthed Arcana version just vanished, but it did.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what Arcana's for, where it's a
Yeah.
lot of play testing stuff, and most of it, as from what I've noticed anyway, most of it goes through. But yeah, I mean, I assume stuff will get pruned as they go on because eventually, I mean, I don't understand the process of how somebody would, uh, want to actually have those things out there as new features for something. Um, as part, I'm talking about like as a member of Wizards themselves, and
Right.
then turn around and actually have a meeting and say, okay, guys, we've had this stuff, we've done some play testing, we've had some feedback. This one sucks. Let's get rid of it. And I mean, in my opinion, I from all of the books that I've seen in the last couple of years, a lot of it seems very much like they've gone back into the well and thought, okay, well, we had some really cool stuff in 1987, and
Mhm.
let's rewrite it, bring it to 5e, and then that they don't. I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but a lot of it I feel like is just recycled stuff from beforehand, which I is fine, and I think it's totally great. A lot of the older stuff should come forward and should be published by the wizards, the where it comes from,
Mhm.
but there's definitely um, that element of you kind of it feels a bit stale. And Rangers, I don't know. Are they? Would you think of them as stale at all? I don't think so, but
I
maybe I
don't
don't
think
know. I
so. I
haven't
think
really
a
thought of
lot
it
of it
that
is
way.
how the player plays it. I mean, yes, they could be improved a bit, and I think with you and your DM can do that as well. I don't think they're that stale. I think there's still some good things in there, and I think a lot of it is how the person plays it. Um, like I said, there's a lot of features that I've noticed people haven't used with the Ranger, at least in our groups. But I think there's a lot there. I think what you're saying about the adventures is true. That you know, like the Strahd adventure was basically Ravenloft reborn. The Giants Adventures, some of the Giants Adventure from the 80s. The Salt Marsh, that one is a little. That's one where they think they kind of started to go off script more, where there's a lot of it to me doesn't make sense of the new part of Saltmarsh. Like for example, they have monster creatures in there, NPCs who don't exist in Greyhawk, um, and there's some different other focuses there other than the story, I think. But they have gone back a lot to the original content, although sometimes they've changed it so much it's not there's nothing really similar anymore.
Well, it's time to make more classes. We need to come up with some cool ones, like what's really funny actually. Every time I hear Beastmaster for Ranger, I
Yeah,
always think of that
movie.
really terrible movie with like Mark Singer from like I don't know
Yeah.
83, 82, somewhere in there.
Wasn't he in V? Wasn't he the guy in V? It was him, right?
Yeah, he was the guy. He was
Yeah.
the lead in V. He
Yeah.
had a decent career back then. Actually, he was an
Oh
'80s
yeah,
superstar.
for sure.
But yeah, definitely. That's what I think of all the time, and I can't think of really any way to play that in D&D. Really, there's no sort of skill. You have the companion, but there's no that companion. I guess in Mark Singer land was companion plus because he could see through their eyes and control
Yeah.
them somewhat. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think the name's a bit misleading. It's not as
you're
powerful
not
as
really a master. You're like Beast
no.
Buddy.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Beast facilitator.
I facilitate the interaction with a beast in order for it to
Yes.
either defend or cuddle me late at night when it's cold.
Yes. And the evil humanoids in the wilderness, I just go out to negotiate them because I don't want to get in the way of their truth. You know, I want
That's
to
right.
I want to, I want to respect who they are.
As they're ripping the larynx from my throat.
Yeah.
I understand the. It's a game. Oh my lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
On
think
that
we're
note.
both affected by the mass amount of pollen in our city right now.
Oh hell yes. I forgot to take my allergy medication yesterday and paid for it when I woke up this morning.
Yeah. I'm sure it helped today with that storm with wind and hail and rain and thunder. I'm sure that just blew the pollen all around the whole city.
It was sunny in the morning.
Yeah.
It became cold.
Yep.
Then we had
Very cold.
lightning and thunder. Then we
Yeah.
had hail and rain.
Hail.
And then it sort of, I guess it sort of got gloomy. But the temperatures definitely dropped. And that, I got to say, complete and utter D&D weather. Like today was like something magical was going on. There was a
Yeah.
fight somewhere, and we were just missing out, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. And the rangers who were out there in the wilderness, they could see all of this that was going on.
Yep, and
Yeah.
they were tracking whatever was causing it, and they
Yeah.
probably killed it because it got better.
That's right.
I
Those orcs
gesture
are
towards my
vanquished.
window, which is that way.
The orcs are finished.
So true. On that note, boys and girls, thank you all for coming by, listening, and watching. Don't forget to do all the doobly-doo stuff, which, of course, is, click buttons and make bells ring, because we will love you forever. Is that what we're going to do, Andrew? We love them forever?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, sir, before I completely lose my mind. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Later.